This is Jillian Hartley with Arkansas Northeastern College. I am interviewing Rachel Gifford, who is the Vice President for Development and College Relations. It is September 25th, 2024, and Rachel is taking a part in our oral histories of ANC. So welcome, Rachel.
Thank you.
Yeah, do I have your permission to record?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. So can you tell us a little bit about when and where you were born?
I actually was born in Memphis. My parents lived there briefly, but my dad is from Mississippi County. He was born and raised in Manila. So when I was 2, they moved back to Manila.
So you've been here most of your, in the area most?
Yes, I've been here since 1972.
So those are your parents. Can you describe some of the makeup of your family in addition to your parents?
Yes, my mother was from Tennessee, just across the river. And my dad came from a farming family. Both my parents were in farming families. So agriculture is very prominent within my entire family. In fact, and my husband is involved in agriculture. So that's my dad was working on the farm when he met her. He was picking cotton, and they would do picking over in Tennessee, and he met her at a bank.
Oh.
So
did you go to high school in Manila?
I went to high school in Manila, all through school in Manila. I graduated there in 1989, and my husband is from Armorel. His family is actually from Tomato.
Really?
Yeah. So we met after I'd graduated college and come home.
So where did you go? Tell us just a little bit about your formal education beyond high school.
Okay. I graduated from Manila, and I went to what is now Lyon College. It was Arkansas College at the time, which may be the oldest college in the state. I played basketball there 4 years, moved home, took a temporary job at the FSA office, and that's how I met my husband. His aunt worked there, and she introduced us. So we started dating, and within 5 months got married.
Oh, wow.
And I was working at the hospital. I found a job shortly after that, a full-time job at the hospital in marketing. And I worked there a couple of years and met Dr. Myers. Actually, wasn't a doctor at the time. And that's when I was able to come to the college. There was an opening, and he hired me in 1996. And after I started working there, then I decided to go back to graduate school. Went to Arkansas State, earned my master's in mass communications.
Very nice. So you've been in higher ed
Ever since. I've been here ever since 1996.
You started working at ANC in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
So you started off in PR. So what titles have you held?
Okay. When I came, I wasn't a full replacement for Cecil Holyfield. He was an early employee. I think he may have been the first assistant to the president. And he held a number of roles. I think he was over student services. He was over the foundation. He was over marketing. And I don't even know what else. But when he left, I think they divvied up parts of his job to other employees. And then they hired me to take on the foundation and marketing part. And I was hired in as the director of development. And just over time, was able to promote after I earned my master's degree. I became a dean. I don't know what years. They added off-campus centers to my list of responsibilities. Then became an associate VP, and they had given me community education, and that's kind of where I am still.
So when you started, it was Mississippi County Community College.
Yes, it was, and I was the only one. So in my area, now I have other people that work with me, and I started out in marketing. I say it was just me. I had a part-time person, Jane Huffman, and she handled what used to be the News and Notes tabloid. And it was a monthly publication that was produced and inserted in the local paper, the Blauville Courier at the time. And then, of course, that was back when you go take pictures and send your film off and get it developed, and then you go up to the paper, and she would do the wax sheets, and you lay it out, and
Yeah, you have to get your fingers sticky to stick those things in. Yeah.
And they sold ads to cover the cost of it. So we did that for a number of years. And so for a long time, I didn't have anybody helping in my area, and I didn't have much of a budget. My first budget was $20,000.
Wow.
We had no marketing materials whatsoever. So I put together some of our. Let me take that back. When they built the college, when they first built it in the 80s, a professional had taken pictures, and they put together just some pamphlets it's mostly about the solar energy, but that was, I guess, what they but no program kind of publications, brochures, and so I designed some, and they were very elementary looking, but that's what we used for a long time. I didn't have the money to do much else.
Well, and a lot has changed over the years, because colleges at one time were oftentimes limited to kind of their own areas, and you probably didn't have to market as much,
There definitely wasn't as much going on. The enrollments were probably even maybe more, but we weren't as spread out. There weren't as many locations. There weren't. There is something going on somewhere almost every day now.
Yeah.
So it's great, but it's
It's a lot. There's a lot. So when you first started, what did the campus look like?
My first office was upstairs, and where in administration, I'm just kind of hovered kind of in the same areas, but it's actually where Jennifer Johnson's office is now. And for a while it had been a storage room. I'm trying to think. We did not have State House Hall. Of course, I absolutely didn't have the Allied Tech Center. We did have the Harry L. Crisp Center, and we had the Leachville Center.
Was the recital hall there, or?
Yes, but it was very new. It
Okay.
came in '93, and I came in '96. And I was here, and in '97 they added the Osceola Center. And I hadn't worked here very long, and that's when they had the groundbreaking. It was in '97.
So you've seen a lot of expansion, though.
Oh, yes.
A lot of buildings, like the nursing building and the wellness center, and obviously the Allied Tech.
Yeah, my office was in the Moark building for a while when they had the nursing over there. Our foundation owned that building.
And where was that?
It's the large building. It's now the Blytheville Public Schools Administration building, the large building over near the post office downtown.
Okay.
We had, basically, there was, I'm going to use the word donor, there was someone who had purchased that building, and I'm trying to remember how that actually, if they sold it to us for a discounted rate or donated it to us. And we moved our nursing program down there, retrofitted some of the areas for that, and had some of our grant programs there. And then the building was so large, we couldn't really occupy all the space, so we rented out in kind to the Blytheville Public Schools, and they did some remodeling and renovations. We maintained the boardroom, which was a beautiful area of that building, all glass, and basically the nice office suite, which that building had originally been owned by an energy company. And so we didn't want to give that space up, so they moved the foundation offices there. So I got to be there, and I worked there for a few years.
So do you have any kind of, that's a really good kind of background over those buildings and how the landmarks have changed. Is there anything in particular about any of the buildings or campus features, or is there anything that has a historical significance for you beyond what you've already described?
Well, that building, that was interesting, and then we ended up, after a few years, we vacated that building. We sold it to the Blytheville Public Schools, so that's why they took full ownership of that facility. I will say that the Leachville Center was is an interesting facility, because that building, Well, the first Leachville Center was donated to us by Bo and Myrna Adams, who also, for a long time, sponsored a scholarship through the foundation, a very good scholarship. They scholarshiped all county graduates, and when they finished with us, continued it on to ASU. So if you got the Adams Scholarship, that was a really big deal. But that building burned in the late 80s. And then, so there was like a fundraising effort with the people, and then that's how we have our Leachville Center there. It originally came from the Adams family.
Okay. And it also, the current building also is the Mississippi County Library there.
Library, correct. That's correct. And then kind of the same with Osceola. There was a $250 donation by the Ohlendorf family to start that. Now, I came in after it was already completed, but early enough to kind of know what had occurred. Mr. Ohlendorf had given the money, and then they did fundraising throughout that community, and they worked it out. It's a very unique thing. There aren't a lot of places that have the college that builds an actual facility on the grounds of the local high school campus, which is what we did. And they originally did that so that we could share facilities. Like, we used it mainly at the beginning for evening classes, and we didn't have labs, so we might teach a science class down there, but we didn't have a lab. But in the evening, we had access to the high school labs. So there were a lot of, classes like that occurred in Osceola in the early days.
So it's mutually beneficial.
Mutually beneficial. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know that. So looking kind of at your early experience, at the beginning at the college, and you can even come up closer to today, but are there any stories or anecdotes about notable figures involved in the establishment or when you first started? Anybody who just stands out that you would like to talk about, and why?
There are many, really. And my involvement with the foundation, there are people that really weren't even employees of the college, but that were huge supporters. Trying to think. I mean, I would feel remiss not to mention Louise Calvert. I worked very closely with her. And she was not the first, but the second assistant to the president hired, but she came very early on. The first one I don't think lasted very long. So she had worked for Dr. Harry Smith, the first president. And when I left the Artmo Center, I moved back to the office in the president's suite at that time. And that was about 21 years ago. And she was the assistant to the president. And I learned a lot from her. At that time, Dr. Sullins was the president. So she had worked for Dr. Smith and then Dr. Sullins, and then she worked for Dr. Myers for a while before she passed away. But she was a very interesting person. I learned a lot about where we had come from because she was so early on, but she came from a different era. She still wrote in shorthand, and we still find in files all of her notes, and I think it's beautiful to look at it. I can't read it, but she had all these shorthands, and I used to call her lightning fingers because I could hear her typing out there, and she was just so fast. She was the valedictorian of her high school class, but at that time, women didn't necessarily go off to school, and her dad and her parents weren't really, I don't want to say they weren't supportive. They loved her very much, but just women, for the most part, didn't go to school.
That era.
They went to work. And I guess till the day she died, she wore, a dress or skirt and blouse and heels to work every day, And just interesting.
You are heavily involved with the ANC Foundation.
Oh, yes.
Can you give us some background about how it started? I mean, obviously community colleges have a close connection to the community in some ways more than what like a university might. Mm-hmm. So can you kind of give us some background on the foundation and then also kind of talk about how it's evolved?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, foundations for community colleges aren't necessarily an old thing. That's fairly recent. A lot of our community colleges across the state started in the 90s because most people, a lot of times they're made up of alumni, people who have been to an institution, and a lot of times their loyalties would be with the universities where they completed. We happen to be kind of on the forefront. We're one of the older foundations in the state. We were established in 1977, shortly after the establishment of the college. It's my understanding that one of the reasons they wanted to establish the foundation was they were needing to have the new sign, the big sign, entrance sign to the college. And the Wilson family donated $25,000 toward that sign. But we wanted a foundation for that to go through so that they could have the tax benefit of that gift, because $25,000 in the early 80s was a significant gift. So we established the Mississippi County Community College in 1977, and that the first major gift was the $25,000 for the sign.
Now, is that the sign that's still out front?
It is still out front. It has had some major changes to it. Now it has the digital board inserted into it. But the original structure of the sign was a donation that came through the foundation. Since then, we've had some other extremely generous donations. Lots and lots of donations, don't get me wrong. But the Bush family donated $1 million. And that story was kind of funny because that was when Dr. Solons was president. And he said that Mr. Bush called him one day. And this is, I think Alan Bush, his son, had been on our board of trustees, but I don't know if I think he came after all this. This was around the same time, within probably a year or two of the gift from the Adams to the Adams Vines, for the Adams Vines building. But he called him to come over to his house. He said he had something for him. So he stopped by, and I think he was just out in his yard, and he just ran in the house. And he came out and just gave him a check, and it was $1 million.
Wow.
And so we have the Bush Endowment, and we use the interest off of that. And we've used it for a variety of different things. It'll build up, and then, I mean, it has been very helpful to us on several projects that we have done.
And so and a lot of the donations go to scholarships.
Yes, a lot do. But back to the Bush, that's why we have the Bush Plaza. Now, that was named for him, and that was because of that wonderful gift. Then the Adamses came along, and they had been funding a scholarship. They stopped doing that right before I came in, before I got... I remember it when I was in high school, because it was, I think they gave one to each area high school, but it would stay with you and continue. So they had stopped doing that, but they gave I want to say it was $1.8 million toward our Adams Vines building and library.
And the recital hall, does that count?
Yes, all of that was
the recital hall is something. I mean, it's something else. I mean, that's a really nice.
It's a very nice facility, and imagine having a campus where you don't have any of that.
Right.
You know, and a library. We didn't have a library. That's why we have such a close association with the Mississippi County Library System, because for so many years we were dependent on them. That's the library that had to help take care of our students. To get accreditation, you have to have access to the library on your campus. So.
Well, the foundation, too, I know you also put together a fundraiser every year. And
fundraiser every year. We've been very fortunate in that our big needs, we haven't had to do really what I call heavy soliciting. We just kind of let our needs be known, and just somebody seems to always step up to the plate. And I think that's a testament to how people feel about our college and what a difference it makes to our communities. Just like the wellness center, Mr. Briggs donated that before he passed away, and wanted it he was so precious. I met with him to do just kind of a little story on him and that gift, and they gave, I believe it was $250,000 toward that project. And the reason why it's called Briggs Seabow, and that's how it's pronounced, because that's how he told me. It's spelled, you'd almost think Seabaw, but it's Seabow. That was his in-laws. And he had a scholarship at the college, the Janetta Briggs scholarship, and that was his wife who had passed away. She was a pianist, and they funded like a music scholarship. But he talked so sweetly about his wife, who had been dead for so many years, and he gave it, and he and her family, and how wonderful they had been to him, and had accepted him and brought him into the area, and so he wanted their name on there too. And I left that meeting with him thinking, that man loves his wife so much, and I hope my husband would be that way about me.
It's really sweet.
It was so sweet. So there's that gift. Then the foundation played a role in the Angela Wren nursing building. The Wrens donated $500,000 toward that facility, and they did that in memory of their daughter, who had worked as a nurse and who had passed away. And it's an amazing facility.
It's amazing for people with the community to care that much, and to know that the history of those buildings, and that's wonderful. And with the foundation stuff too, I know that once upon a time they used to have a car party. You guys would literally give away a car. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's what has become our harvest party.
But it's a harvest party now.
We have, we've had 2 major fundraisers a year, for the most part. But the car party is the oldest, and it was started back in the 80s, and it was somebody in the community who had a car, like an old collectible, I don't know, it was not like a brand new, but it was like an old-timey car, and they donated it, and so they came up with this event, and people, it used to be a very fancy thing, like people wore their sequins and their tuxedos, and it was a really neat thing, and they did the car for a few years. That we couldn't sustain that because people donating cars every year for us. But it has evolved over the years, and it's now, because it's always a fundraiser that we have in the fall, and we like to have it kind of close to year end, so people that have, we're on their months for their year end giving. And that event, last year it raised $27,000.
Wow.
And so, but I remember the days that we used to sell, 300, 400, 500 tickets. Now it's a lot smaller than that now. We sell 150 or 200.
But if you look at the demographics of the county,
right,
the
population
county has lost some population, yeah.
And then we have our golf tournaments, and like you said, the scholarships. We probably have 25 foundation, just general scholarships. There's more than that, but we probably have, I don't know, 500,000 that are endowed.
Wow. So you talk about the golf tournament. We have a sponsor for that, but I also want to tie this into talking about the ambassador program, because we send ambassadors to Japan almost every year. And we do that because of the relationship that we have with Nucor. So would you mind giving us some background on that and talking about the ambassadors?
Yes, and it's our relationship with Yamato-Kogyo.
Okay.
I'll go back a little further. Back when the area was looking at bringing the steel mill here, they sent a group of 10 or 15 local people to Japan to meet with Mr. Hiroki Inoue, who was the owner of the Yamato-Kogyo steel mill. And I know that they had economic development people, they had some bankers, and they asked the president of the college, who was John Sullins, and they all went to Japan and met and visited. And at that time, they were telling what the county would do for them if they would agree to come, and this joint venture could go through. And Dr. Solons did tell them at that time, because they would be bringing engineers and different people here to work, just a handful. They might have 5 to 10 employees that would be here at the local mill who were from Japan. And he promised that the college would provide English as a second language classes for those employees and or their families at no charge. That was one of the benefits. So when they agreed to the joint venture with Nucor and came, then we started providing that. And we run it through our community ed, and we've been doing it ever since. And it's primarily the wives of the workers, and it's usually only 3 or 4. But so Mr. Inouye, in wanting to keep a relationship with the area and to give back to the area, wanted to establish this golf tournament. And they bring in and they have 2 board meetings a year, and so they have one of them here in the United States, and they plan this golf tournament around that board meeting because it brings in their people who are located not only in Japan but across the United States. And it also, the tournament also brings in a lot of their vendors and whatnot. So the tournament started in, I believe, 1991. And it was successful. It was fun. It is a fundraiser, but that one is more of a friend raiser. It's not like your typical charity golf tournament where every hole they're like, here, buy a mulligan, or chip in for the. It's not like that. But Yamato does give a donation every year. In fact, the tournament itself would just break even. The money we made was the donation. We've gotten it now where we make a little more money. But after they did that for a few years, it was at the tournament that Mr. Inouye said that he would like to invite students to Japan to learn more about that culture, and then they could bring it back here and share it. And that's how our Ambassadors to Japan program was started. And I want to say I wrote that down. Let's see. That started in 96. That's right, because the first ambassadors went in May of 96, and I started in September of 96. So I've been with it ever since the second group.
Okay, and it's usually 2 students.
It's 2 students. The criteria has changed a little bit over the years, but primarily they have to be, if not full-time students, at least in 9 hours. They have to be working towards some type of a degree. The reason for that was because we want the students to be coming back so that they're available to talk about their trip. So they have to have between like 30 and 45 hours, but still be planning to get a degree. And they had to be a younger age. I think they wanted them like under 25. And I will tell you, that is because when they get there, they're there for 2 weeks. The people that are showing them around, their hosts, their tour guides, are the younger employees of Yamato.
Okay.
And but it's a wonderful opportunity. They're there for 2 weeks in May. They go right after the end of spring classes and right before the start of summer. That 2-week break there in May, and it's a fabulous opportunity. Our foundation pays for the airfare, and that's it. Everything else is picked up by Yamato-Kogyo.
It's a wonderful program.
It is. And we've had some students actually recognize that they get to see some things in Japan that people that live in Japan don't get to even do. They get to do lots of things. They visit an area's elementary school. They go to different places. Of course, they start out in Himeji, which is home to Yamato-Kogyo. They tour the mill there. They go to Osaka. They go to Kyoto. They go to Hiroshima. They go to Tokyo. They get to ride the bullet train. It's just it's an amazing adventure. And I had the wonderful opportunity and privilege of getting to go in 2015. They hosted me as well for 1 week. And then the next year they sent our president and his wife for a week. And then this year, Dr. Hegel and his family will be going for a week.
I have heard wonderful things from students over the years too, and the value of getting to go and visit with that culture and what they bring back is I think definitely worth the investment. Now looking at campus culture, because you've been with ANC, what would it be,
28 years.
28 years, going on 30 years. So over the years, when you look at campus culture and some of the changes that have happened, what are some of the changes that you've noticed, and what kind of factors you think have influenced changes since really the mid to late 90s?
Well, I think that we have been fortunate to have very forward-thinking leadership. We've had presidents, and specifically Dr. Myers and Dr. Shimwell. Dr. Sullins was fabulous, but he was not here as long during my tenure here. That were very innovative, and I think that our college has been quicker than a lot of our sister institutions to embrace change and try new things, and probably technology-wise. I know that a lot of times when we are meeting with our sister institutions, at least in my areas, when they start talking about things they're doing, I'm like, oh, we've been doing that, I think that has been one thing. I think we were very willing to change with the times, and we've had leadership that's okay with change, and I think that's why we're able to evolve. And I think that we have been very cognizant of what industry wants and needs. When I first started here, we were more geared toward gen ed, a basic transfer degree. And that has changed over time. Not that that's not a huge part of what we do. It absolutely is. But I think that we have embraced our role in workforce training, and that has evolved and grown. And that is a whole lot to Dr. Myers and Dr. Shimwell's credit. And the donation of the Crisp Center, because it was out there in the industrial park, and they made that happen, and they did that early. And that has really, I think, defined a whole lot of our role in what we do. I know from a marketing standpoint, early on, I didn't market technical programs very much. That wasn't. And now it's almost flip-flopped. Yeah. And nursing. Nursing has been an important part of what we do that we've not really ever had to really market a whole lot, because word of mouth. I mean, it just
right. The healthcare professions definitely demand. Probably does a lot of the marketing, if I had to guess.
Yeah. I do want to go back because I thought of something that I didn't mention earlier.
Okay.
Just to maybe edit. I think it's very important to note on our foundation side that we have received some of the largest gifts that we've ever received. Obviously, the Wilson property at $27 million, that's huge, and that just happened, and that hopefully will go down in history as being amazing. That's the second largest private gift to a community college in the nation.
Ever.
Yeah. But back in early 2000, 2001 or 2, we had a donor who passed away and left us roughly 1,600 acres of farmland that covers 3 counties, 2 in Arkansas and 1 in Tennessee, Tipton County, down south here, this area. And it's prime farm ground. And the interesting thing about that was we had no idea that we were in her will.
Really?
No idea. But and this is where your foundation boards are very important to you. Her attorney happened to be on our foundation board. And she said she was working on her will, and she, I think, had planned initially to leave it all to ASU. And he said, well, no, why would you do that when you've got a school right here? And she goes, well, okay. And so Miss Tremu left her land to us, and that's why we have our Tremu Bill. on
front
campus.
Of the campus.
We went to the old homestead that sat on the farm, and they had a bell there where her house was. Now, she hadn't lived in that house in a while, but that was the old homestead. And we took that bell so that we could have a marker on campus to commemorate her gift. And that, well, for years, that farmland has generated $166,000 a year for scholarships. Now it's generating much more than that. It's generating over $300,000 a year.
That's amazing.
So we are getting very close to the point with that. We have also 40 acres of farm ground. After she did that and we publicized that, there was a little lady in the Boot Hill who contacted us and said, well, I have 40 acres. And so she put us in her will, and now we have 40 acres in the Boot Hill. That goes for scholarship money. We're getting very, very, very close to being able to say, your school is paid for.
And you know, Rachel, this is probably, as far as the interview goes, such an important point, because for a lot of people in the realm of higher ed, it's very common, for example, and I'm going to say it, Harvard gets crazy amounts of donations and stuff, and it's, you know, so well funded. And so one of the big things that a lot of colleges are looking for is, how do we get some of that money? And so oftentimes the people who are donating to places like that need to realize that if they donated to some smaller institutions, the impact that that money would make. And I think everything you've just said the last 10 minutes has really talked about, like, that's such an important thing, and it can make such a difference to areas, especially where the communities are so attached to their colleges and training facilities.
Yeah, no, not only the impact, but it goes further.
Right.
Because it's not as expensive for our students to go to school here as it is at Harvard.
Of course.
So your money goes further.
Right.
And I remember one time it was Lane Rader was wanting new microscopes for her lab. It was going to be like $50,000, and we didn't have it in the college budget. And they set up this little display where we could go and kind of look, and the foundation came up with that money. So our foundation has really benefited the college in many, many ways. Scholarship that's a huge part of it, but many other ways as well.
Well, and that's something that kind of leads into my next question about alumni. Because obviously alumni play a huge role in the foundation, but also in other ways too. So do you have anything you can share with us about alumni sort of shaping the college's history, its legacy?
Back, I want to say probably back in the early 2000s, we decided, we need an alumni association. And we reached out, we pulled records of past graduates. First of all, let's try to define an alumni. Is it someone who graduated, someone who got a certificate, someone who attended for so many hours? I like to attend them. If they came, they're part of us, they're alumni, But we did have an alumni association briefly during Dr. Sullen's reign, but it never really got off the ground, because I think it's because we started them out wrong. We started them out as, you're just here to be on the foundation as fundraisers, and they're more than that. I think where our alumni have really helped us is that they're passionate about us. You got the Toby Johnsons out there who love us. You've got Christy Patterson out there. She came into my office, not this past December, but the one before, and gave me a check, just $15,000 for a scholarship. And she teared up and said, when I came to school out here, I couldn't go to ASU anymore. I couldn't afford to do that. I didn't have the money. And this college was here for me, and I was able to do what I did because of it, and I want to give back. And I think that's a big part of what our alumni do for us. And I will add that, my mom is a story of that. We lived in Manila. She had not gone to school, had always wanted to be a school teacher. And she couldn't afford to go. My dad was working on the farm. My grandpa owned the farm at the time. And so it wasn't like he was making all the money. And she wanted to go to school. Well, guess what? They decided to vote and create a community college in Blytheville. Well, if she could do that, so she came over here, or went to Blytheville, and I don't know who this person is. I wish I did. It was getting close to graduation. Was an excellent student, but my dad told her, he said, "You're going to have to go. We can't pay this." And someone called her in to some office, and this was back early. I think this was in the late 70s, early mid 70s. This was right after they opened, and told her they didn't want her, and they somehow found the money for her to go. I don't know who it was. Wow. I don't know where the money came from. I don't know if it was a foundation. I don't know if it was foundation. It was very early foundation. And then she went on to be able to go to ASU later, win the Early Childhood Award, and become a teacher that impacted lives.
For years.
For years.
Yeah.
All because we have this place.
Means something. It really does. So, as far as you've touched upon a few of these, but I'm going to ask this question just in case there's more.
Okay.
Any notable achievements or contributions by alumni? Anything else that you can think of? And you've already given a lot here, but
we have some cool alumni, and I know this because we kind of think through them when we're every year trying to choose one for our ACC. Our first outstanding alumni was Terry Brooks, who was kind of semi-famous. He was a news anchor, But we've got alumni who've gone on and to be very successful. Maybe not famous, but successful.
And we do honor them too through the Arkansas Community Colleges Conference. Honor alumni every year. And it's always really nice to hear their different stories because, like you say, they may be, working in industry, they may be teachers, but the fact is, starting here, they have gone on to do
just some of them that come
remarkable things.
Yeah, some of them that come to mind. Blytheville Mayor Melissa Logan was a graduate. Brad Harrison, who is the head of energy, was a graduate. Christy Patterson, who's head of Southern Bancorp, was a graduate. And I'm missing many, I know. I mean, there's doctors and lawyers and teachers and nurses and lots of success. Well, I'll tell you, there was a guy from Manila who came, and he actually went on a basketball scholarship to MCCC when we had a basketball team. His name is Alan Moore. And that name may not mean much to you, but it means a lot to people in Alaska because he's in Alaska now and is a famous, he's retired now, musher who competed in the Iditarod and I think he won it, and he won another big one. Just a really cool story.
Oh, wow.
And now his daughter's mushing, but just kind of neat.
That is really, really neat. Well, is there anything else as far as like major milestones? You having almost a 30-year career there, you've probably seen a number of milestones or achievements. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that helped kind of shape the institution's trajectory?
Probably not what I've already talked about. I think a lot of that trajectory, our leadership has. Yeah, when you get to talk to Dr. Shimwell, you'll hear a whole lot.
Well, you come in a few years after the air base closed, when probably was a time when a lot of people were worried about enrollment, but yet, as you and others have talked about, because of innovation, ANC,
they immediately started doing things like the establishment of the University Center. Reached out, and that's back when we had the compressed video, two-way televisions, but a lot of students were able to get bachelor's degrees on our campus by having that opportunity, and And so, yeah, I think we've kind of tried to do everything we could do to meet the needs of our area. We'll continue to do that.
Yeah.
Those needs are changing, and that means we have to change.
Yes.
But we've
done a lot of online.
We've done lots of online.
Your kids, I mean,
yeah.
They've taken classes, and we've tried to make it accessible, but maintain the quality. So kind of reflecting back, when you look at community colleges now, you think about the future. What do you envision for community colleges in, let's say, 10, 20 years down the road?
I think that we will become even more of a major player. I think that people are, it's interesting. I was thinking the other day, years ago, and maybe to some small degree now, there was this stereotype that community colleges were lesser than. The people that go to community colleges are the ones that can't go to universities. I was watching an old episode of The Big Bang Theory, and there was a derogatory comment from Sheldon, and you think community college is impressive. I think that is going away. I think people are understanding now that good students go to community colleges, and that's how our academic all-star program got started. ACC, it was all a marketing thing to try to show people that we get good students. You can be good students. It's not just we have good students for community colleges, and that was a way to recognize them and highlight them and show, see, we have good students. So much of what's going on in the world right now doesn't require extra education, sitting in a classroom. They can, and our students now are very interested in quick, short time. And, my daughter has a degree in communications and can't find a job. Now, I bet if she could weld, she could.
It's true. Well, it's funny because, you mentioned like your mom and like being able to come here because it was more affordable in the convenience, which is the story of many community colleges. Because, community colleges, the rising up of them, after Pell Grants by Senator Pell are approved and stuff. But, it's interesting to think about how the demand for shorter term programs almost makes it, in some ways, better for community colleges, because universities are now sometimes looking at offering shorter term stuff too. So you're kind of talking about the stigma that a community college once maybe had, never deserved, but had.
I do think that's going away. I don't think people see us as lesser than anymore.
No. And so with what we've talked about already, looking at ANC being innovative, you probably see the institution being able to continue to evolve and meet the needs of the students in the community over however long.
Yes. And well, we have to evolve to remain relevant. We have to, because our population right now is smaller, and you saturate that, and you got to find other ways to meet other needs and reach other people. And online has done that to some degree.
It has, and it also, there's so much industry in this area, and I think with the solutions group and things like that, we've done a good job of trying to figure out what the need is. But like you say, you have lots of jobs in this area, but not as many people.
Yeah.
Well, when looking at the are there any particular values or traditions that you kind of hope will endure for future generations of students? And you've touched upon this a little bit, talking about the value that ANC has brought to students over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I love our college. It really is a family. It's certainly been good to me and my family. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of people. I mean, you'd be hard pressed. You know, they say that, what is it, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon? I think
Yes.
it's less than that around here for somebody who has some kind of an association or with us. You can't talk to many people around here who don't have somebody who's been impacted by our institution.
And that'll continue.
And I hope that continues. And,
I think it will.
you know, we've had, like I said, good leadership. All of them so different. I've worked for every president now except for Dr. Smith. And they have all been so different. But I think for the time that they were here, perfect. You know, Dr. Shimwell and Dr. Sullins, totally opposites. I mean, just totally different. But both of them great, you know. And I just think for the times that they were here, they were perfect for that time. And Dr. Hegel seems to be excited and innovative, and he's got lots of ideas, and
Yeah.
you know, it's going to be interesting to see what the future holds.
It is. So, do you have any other reflections or insights that you wish to share with me today?
No, I think we kind of.
Well, and I really appreciate you doing the interview and sharing, obviously, your experience being in the profession, but also sharing your story about your mom, because I think when we look at the value of community colleges, that's what stands out,
Mm-hmm.
and something that people need to remember.
Yeah.
So, Rachel, thank you so much for doing this interview with me today.
You are welcome.